Ever wondered what it might be like to hear a prominent figure just speak their mind, completely unfiltered?
It's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it?
Yeah, and the piece you've shared today kind of leans into that. It's called Talking with Donald Trump, the Unfiltered Interview.
Right. And what's really interesting about this source,
Hmm.
even though it is hypothetical, is just how much it crams in.
How so?
Well, you get all those recurring themes, the typical phrases and ways of speaking. We really connect with Donald Trump. It's like a concentrated version of his perspective.
Okay, so let's treat this as our deep dive into that imagined unfiltered chat. The goal for everyone listening is really to unpack the main ideas, get a handle on the viewpoints presented in this kind of unconstrained setting.
Sounds good.
So, where does this hypothetical conversation kick off?
It starts right away with Trump's return to campaigning and his reasons for jumping back in. According to the piece, it's driven by this belief that, well, the country needs him, that people miss his leadership. And of course, criticisms of how things are now, borders, the economy, that sort of thing.
And he doesn't wait long to draw that contrast, does he, between his time and now?
No, not at all. This imagined Trump says he, quote, built the greatest economy. And he puts that right up against what he calls a mess today.
It's definitely a narrative we've heard this idea of a decline since he left office.
And that opening line in the piece,
Hmm.
it's almost spot on, isn't it?
Which one?
The nobody does interviews like me, folks. Nobody.
Yeah.
The ratings through the roof. You're lucky to have me. Very lucky. It's instantly recognizable.
Yeah, it sets a certain tone right from the start.
Absolutely. Self-promotion, declaring his own value, it's all there.
Let's unpack that opening just a little. Why do you think that immediate assertion of his own importance is such a consistent thing in his communication?
Well, it seems to work on a couple of levels, right? For his supporters, it's probably a signal of confidence. And for the interaction itself, it immediately frames things. It's like, these are the terms, I'm the important one here.
Mhm.
He uses that perceived newsworthiness to, command the room.
Makes sense. So moving on in this piece, it gets into some of the more contentious stuff.
Right, the whole issue of national division comes up.
And the interviewer figure in the text asks him directly, like, who's responsible?
And the Trump response in the piece, a total denial of any blame, points fingers at fake news, weak leadership,
And then pivots.
immediately pivots. Back to his perceived wins, brought jobs, strength. It's that consistent deflection pattern.
Plus the mention of haters, right? People who just won't admit he was correct.
Exactly. It paints this picture of him being right, but facing unfair opposition.
So disagreement is framed as either what? Misinformation or just animosity.
Pretty much. Fake news or haters. It's a way to dismiss criticism without really engaging with the substance of it. It's a powerful rhetorical approach, really.
The piece even brings up that old Fifth Avenue quote.
Ah, yes. Where he suggested his supporters were incredibly loyal.
And the interviewer asks if that still holds water.
And the response in this text is quite interesting. He doesn't exactly repeat it, does he?
Yeah.
Instead, he connects it to his poll numbers, dismisses scrutiny as, witch hunts.
So the implication is my support is still strong enough to withstand this.
That seems to be the idea. He pivots from the specific quote to this broader claim of strong standing. It's quite telling how he sidesteps the original statement, but reinforces the underlying message.
So this section of the imagined interview really seems to nail down that pattern. Deflect, emphasize popularity, frame opposition as illegitimate.
Precisely. It highlights a strategy focused on keeping the base loyal by creating this narrative of constant attack from outside forces, but unwavering support from the people, no matter the specifics.
Okay, let's shift gears to the 2024 election, as it's portrayed in this hypothetical interview. What's the plan for day one if he wins?
According to the piece, it's very punchy. Drill, seal the border, and cut taxes.
Right. Drill presumably meaning energy production.
Yeah, likely expanding fossil fuels,
Hmm.
then strong border control and tax cuts. Framed as quick, decisive actions to change the country's direction fast.
And these are core issues for his base.
Absolutely. Speaks directly to them.
And the piece also mentions him drawing a direct line between Biden reversing his policies and inflation.
Yes, exactly. The imagined Trump paints inflation as a direct result of Biden undoing his work. It's a common political tactic, blaming current problems on the other side.
Standard playbook stuff. Create a narrative of failure, promise restoration.
You got it.
So how does this imagined scenario handle the possibility of losing the election?
The response is pretty blunt. Not going to happen.
Right. But does it stop there?
No. It then goes on, if a loss did happen, to bring up claims of a potentially rigged election again.
And hints at challenging it.
Yes, suggesting a fight, maybe even bigger than last time.
So, for listeners, it's worth thinking about what that kind of language implies, isn't it? About the view presented here on democratic elections.
It definitely signals a readiness to question the legitimacy of an unfavorable outcome, which, raises serious questions about trust in the process itself and the potential for future challenges.
Okay, let's move to legacy. The interview in the piece touches on how this version of Trump wants to be remembered.
And his first reaction is very direct. A winner,
Yeah.
a fighter.
That sums up a core part of his self-image, doesn't it? Achievement, combativeness.
Yeah, it's a powerful, very concise summary of how he sees himself, or at least how this piece portrays him seeing himself.
He does mention the attacks, the investigations,
Yeah.
dismisses them as nonsense, right? Russia, Ukraine.
Yes, but he follows that by saying he believes his people, understand his perspective anyway.
Reinforcing that narrative, again, unfairly targeted, but ultimately understood and supported by his base.
Exactly, a sense of resilience against what he frames as, baseless attacks.
The piece also has some claiming he gave people a voice. What do you think is meant by that in this context?
It probably taps into that connection he forged with people who felt perhaps overlooked or unheard by the usual political system.
The outsider who amplified their concerns?
That seems to be the idea behind it, speaking for those who felt left out.
And then there's that slightly odd bit about the memes.
Ah, yeah. The best memes, and specifically Cuff-a-Fay.
Why do you think that makes it into a discussion about legacy in this imagined piece?
It's unexpected, right? Maybe it's a nod to the huge role of online culture, acknowledging how his persona was, amplified and debated and even satirized online.
Like even the weird stuff, the typos became part of the brand.
Perhaps. It adds a strange sort of relatability almost, an awareness of his digital footprint.
So as this imagined interview wraps up, what are the final words from this Trump figure?
He talks right to the audience. Stay tuned, you ain't seen nothing yet.
A bit of a cliffhanger. Keep watching.
Definitely implies he's not going anywhere. Then there's a plug to subscribe to the channel. And a compliment to the interviewer, terrific guy, very fair, immediately contrasted with a jab at CNN.
Classic media critique, highlighting his preferred versus untrusted sources.
Exactly. Reinforces that ongoing battle with parts of the press. And the subscription plug is just a practical media touch.
And the ending itself is quite theatrical in the piece, a mock mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop and exit, and then the interviewer starts to tease a future talk with Biden.
Only to be interrupted.
Cut off by a Trump voiceover saying, wrong.
Huh. Okay, so it ends abruptly, making sure his voice is the last one heard.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
A final bit of political rivalry thrown in. Very dramatic.
Okay, so as we finish our deep dive into this imagined, unfiltered interview, what are the big themes, the perspectives that really stand out from the piece?
Well, there's that unwavering self-belief in his record, right? The constant deflection of blame, framing criticism as malicious.
Yeah.
And this deep conviction in his popular support.
And the election comments.
And definitely the talk around 2024, signaling that readiness to challenge results he doesn't like, citing potential rigging.
Were there any moments in this hypothetical text that felt particularly memorable or maybe surprising?
I think the way the Fifth Avenue quote was not repeated, but kind of repurposed is still pretty striking. And honestly, the cafe mentioned during the legacy part is just unusual, but maybe says something about his awareness of his cultural impact, memes and all.
Fair enough. So, for everyone listening, we really encourage you to think about the viewpoints laid out in this imagined interview. Setting aside your own feelings, what does this kind of unfiltered portrayal, even if it's hypothetical, tell us about the perspectives being communicated?
Yeah, and that leads to our final thought for you to consider. Thinking about this imagined, no-holds-barred conversation, what single thing strikes you as the most revealing element about the perspective being shown here? And why might that particular element be significant for understanding the bigger picture, the wider discussions around this